The silk suits hanging in King Thaddeus Ravencroft's private office closet were worth more than most mortals earned in a lifetime. Italian wool, hand-stitched seams, the kind of fabric that whispered wealth with every movement. Lorelei Ashcroft pressed her trembling hands into those suits now, trying to muffle the sound of her breaking. She had maintained perfect composure for 8 months. 8 months of walking through shadows and bloodstains like they were nothing more than office hazards. 8 months of keeping her eyes down and her pulse steady while immortal predators moved through the halls of power like smoke through stone. But now the carefully constructed walls were crumbling. The air dropped 10 degrees in a single heartbeat. That unnatural cold that always announced his presence. The heavy mahogany door swung open without a sound, and moonlight from the towering windows spilled across her tear-streaked face, leaving nowhere to hide. Thaddeus Ravencroft stood in the doorway with the absolute stillness that only the truly ancient could achieve. 800 years of existence compressed into 6 feet of lethal grace, crimson eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. Black velvet jacket tailored to perfection. His platinum hair caught the light like frost on steel. His expression shifted from predatory alertness to something she had never witnessed before. Genuine concern. "Who harmed you?" His voice was dangerously soft. The kind of quiet that preceded hurricanes. "Give me their name, and I will ensure they beg for the mercy of sunrise before I am through with them." The words tumbled out in broken fragments. 8 months of professional distance shattered like glass against stone. "They have Cassie." Her voice cracked on her sister's name. "The Crimson Court took her 3 hours ago from her dorm room. Lord Dominion sent me this." Her hands shook violently as she pulled out her phone. The video that had destroyed her played on the small screen. Cassandra Ashcroft, 19 years old, pre-med student with her whole life ahead of her. Terrified. Compelled into silence, chains glowing with supernatural binding around her wrists. The temperature in the closet plummeted so drastically that Lorelei's breath crystallized in the air between them. Thaddeus's eyes blazed with something far more terrifying than anger, something ancient and absolute that made every survival instinct scream. But he did not move toward her with violence. Instead, his pale hand came up slowly, almost reverently, and wiped a tear from her cheek with his cold thumb. The gesture so unexpectedly gentle that it broke something else inside her. "How long have you carried this alone?" "Since 6 o'clock." His jaw clenched, fangs fully visible now. Then he moved with that impossible speed that always stole breath. The office doors burst open. His presence filled the room like a physical force as he commanded into the darkness. "Summon the council, all of them, now!" 3 shadows detached from the walls. Vampires she had not even known were there. They vanished like smoke. Thaddeus turned back to her. His next words were a vow that resonated with 8 centuries of absolute power. "We ride against the Crimson Court tonight." He stepped closer. His cold hand tilted her chin up until she could not look away from those burning eyes. "You are under my protection now, Lorelei Ashcroft. No one harms what belongs to the king." The council chamber was a cathedral of stone and shadow. Vaulted ceilings that had witnessed centuries of vampire politics, torches that burned with cold fire. 13 thrones arranged in a semicircle around the central dais where Thaddeus stood. Lorelei had never been permitted inside this room before. Now she stood beside the king's throne, her presence a statement that rippled through the assembled immortals like electricity through water. The council members materialized one by one, some through doors, others through shadows, each one a power in their own right. Elder vampires who had walked the earth for hundreds of years. But the room was not united. Lorelei could see it in the way they positioned themselves, the subtle shifts of alliance, the careful distances maintained. Elder Morgana arrived first, 600 years old, silver hair like moonlight, wearing the kind of authority that comes from surviving countless wars. She inclined her head to Thaddeus with genuine respect. Then came the others, Elder Aldrich, councilman for 6 centuries. His eyes lingered on Lorelei with an expression she could not quite read, something calculating behind the facade of concern. Lady Seraphine, Lord Garrett, Councilwoman Valencia, and finally, Councilman Matthias, who did not bow, who stood with his arms crossed and his jaw set. Thaddeus surveyed them all with those ancient eyes. Cassandra Ashcroft was taken from her dormitory 3 hours ago by operatives of the Crimson Court. Lord Dominion Blackwell has made demands. He gestured, and the video played on the stone wall through blood magic so powerful it made the air shimmer. Cassandra, chained, terrified. He requires 3 territories, non-interference in his operations for a decade, and Lorelei Ashcroft's willing submission to a blood bond for 1 century. The council erupted. Outrageous. An act of war. But Councilman Matthias's voice cut through the chaos. Perhaps Lord Blackwell has a point. The room fell silent. Thaddeus turned slowly, dangerously. Explain yourself, Matthias. You have ruled for 800 years, my king. Matthias stepped forward. But in that time you have grown cautious, diplomatic, some might say weak. The Crimson Court challenges you because they sense vulnerability, because you have forgotten what vampires truly are. Murmurs of agreement from 3 other council members. Lorelei's blood ran cold. 40% of the council supporting Dominion's position, not openly, not yet. But the seeds were there. Elder Morgana's voice was sharp as a blade. You speak of strength, Matthias, but you forget wisdom. King Ravencroft has kept our kind hidden from mortal discovery for 8 centuries. Every vampire in this city lives free because of his strategic patience. And yet, Aldrich said smoothly, a mortal girl is used as leverage against us. What does that say about our position? Thaddeus's expression did not change. But Lorelei had worked for him long enough to recognize the calculations running behind those eyes. The council was fractured, divided between those who valued survival through adaptation and those who craved a return to the old ways. Open dominance, rule through fear. And Lord Dominion Blackwell knew it. We convene at the neutral ground, Thaddeus said, his voice cutting through the tension like ice through flesh. Cathedral of the Forsaken. 1 hour. Dominion will state his terms publicly, and I will give him my answer. He turned to Lorelei. Stay close. The Cathedral of the Forsaken had been abandoned by mortals for a century. Now it served as supernatural Switzerland, sacred ground where vampire courts could meet without bloodshed. Theoretically, the space was vast and cold, stone columns rising into darkness, stained glass windows that depicted battles between light and shadow. And in the center, 2 thrones positioned to face each other across an expanse of ancient stone. Thaddeus sat in one throne, his presence filling the cathedral like a physical force. Lorelei stood beside him, not behind. Beside. A deliberate positioning that sent a message. The witnesses filled the pews, both courts represented. Neutral council members stationed at strategic points to enforce the rules of engagement. And then he entered. Lord Dominion Blackwell, 400 years old, dark where Thaddeus was light, brutal where Thaddeus was calculated, his smile cruel, his movements aggressive, ambition burned in his black eyes like hellfire. But there was something else there too. Lorelei saw it as he approached, the way his gaze swept the cathedral, the tactical assessment, the calculated positioning of his followers. This was not impulsive rage, this was strategy. King Ravencroft, Dominion said with mock formality, his voice echoing through the sacred space. How generous of you to accept my invitation. State your terms, Blackwell. Thaddeus's patience was measured in glacial increments. You have already exceeded most of them. Dominion smiled. With a casual wave of his hand, one of his followers projected an image into the air between them using blood magic so powerful it made the temperature spike. Cassandra appeared before them, life-sized, terrifyingly real, chained to a stone wall in what looked like a dungeon, her eyes glazed with compulsion, tears streaming down her face, her wrists raw and bleeding where she had tried to escape. Lorelei's scream tore from her throat before she could stop it. She lunged forward. Thaddeus's iron grip on her waist held her in place. "She is quite comfortable, I assure you," Dominion said conversationally. "Fed twice a day. Compelled to stop screaming after the first few hours. Very well behaved now." His black eyes snapped to Thaddeus. "My terms are simple. 3 territories. The Garden District, the Warehouse Quarter, and the Port. Complete non-interference in my operations for the next decade. And Lorelei Ashcroft's willing submission to a blood bond with me for 1 century, after which I will return her to you, somewhat used, but still alive." The shadows around Thaddeus's throne began to writhe and twist like living creatures. "You dare!" It was not a question. It was a death sentence. But Dominion did not flinch. "I dare because you have grown soft, old king, because you forgot what we are. Apex predators. We should rule through strength, not diplomacy." He stepped closer. 150 years ago, you commanded the retreat at Blackmore Ridge. Do you remember? You ordered the withdrawal to preserve political alliances, mortal alliances. His voice turned bitter. My entire battalion was slaughtered that night. 300 vampires. Cut down because you chose human politics over vampire strength. Lorelei felt the tension shift in the room. This was not just ambition. This was personal. "I was your general," Dominion continued. "I believed in you, and you left us to die." Thaddeus's voice was winter itself. "I ordered the retreat to prevent a war that would have exposed our entire species to mortal discovery. A war that would have ended in extinction. Your battalion died because you ignored direct orders and engaged anyway. You call it orders. I call it cowardice." The temperature dropped another 10 degrees. Lorelei made a decision in that moment. She had spent 8 months organizing intelligence files, reading reports, cross-referencing territorial disputes. She recognized Dominion's phrasing, the specific terminology he used when describing tactical positions. This had been planned, not for weeks, for months. Every word was calculated, every gesture designed to provoke. She leaned close to Thaddeus and whispered, "This is a setup. He wants you angry. He wants you to act impulsively." Thaddeus's eyes flicked to her for a fraction of a second. Understanding passed between them. He turned back to Dominion. "I reject your terms, Dominion Blackwell. I declare your actions an act of war against the Crown." Dominion's smile widened. "Then let us settle this the old way. I invoke the sanguine duel." The entire cathedral fell silent. Even the neutral council members shifted uneasily. The sanguine duel, an ancient law that had not been invoked for 3 centuries. A fight where both combatants were bound by sacred magic that suppressed all vampire powers. No supernatural strength, no speed, no healing, no compulsion. They would fight as mortals fought, with nothing but skill and strategy and will. But the consequences remained immortal. Winner takes all. Loser dies a true death. Thaddeus stood slowly. "I accept." The private chambers were silent except for the sound of Lorelei's racing heartbeat. Thaddeus poured himself something dark from a crystal decanter. His movements were controlled, precise, but she could see the tension in the set of his shoulders. "You knew he would challenge you," she said quietly. "Yes." "This is what he wanted, the duel." "Yes." She crossed to the window. New Orleans spread out below them in a tapestry of lights and shadows. "Then why accept? You said it yourself. This is a trap." Thaddeus set down his glass with deliberate control. "Because the alternative is civil war. 40% of my council supports his philosophy, if not his methods. If I refuse the duel, I lose legitimacy. The council fractures. Vampire turns against vampire. And in the chaos, mortals discover us. We go extinct." He turned to face her. "The sanguine duel allows me to settle this with honor, 1 death instead of thousands." "Your death?" The words hung between them like a blade. Thaddeus moved to stand beside her at the window. Garrick believes this is a setup, that Dominion has been training in mortal combat for decades, specifically for this moment. And you? I have survived 800 years, Lorelei, not through power alone, but through adaptation, through understanding that true strength is not domination. It is endurance. He paused. But yes, there is risk. Lorelei made another decision, one that would change everything. Then we need more than just you preparing to fight. We need intelligence. We need to know where Cassie really is. We need to understand Dominion's full strategy. She turned to face him. You prepare for the duel. I will gather the intelligence. Together, we execute a dual strategy. He expects one threat. We give him two. Thaddeus studied her with those ancient eyes. You are a secretary. I am a woman who has spent 8 months organizing files on every vampire territorial dispute in this city. I know your intelligence network. I know how to read encrypted communications. And I refuse to sit idle while you risk everything for my sister. Something shifted in his expression. Respect. Recognition. Very well. The council reconvened at midnight, but this time the atmosphere was different. Elder Morgana stood with a parchment that looked older than most nations. The sanguine duel has been invoked and accepted. The ancient words must now be spoken to make it binding. Her voice carried through the chamber with the weight of centuries. Both combatants will be bound by suppression magic through ceremonial chains. All vampire abilities will be sealed. They will fight with mortal limitations. The sacred ground of the arena extends 50 yards in all directions from the dueling circle. Any vampire who enters that space during the combat will also be subject to suppression. This is ancient law. This is how we ensure honor is satisfied. She paused, letting the implications sink in. The duel must take place within 3 nights of the challenge being issued. 3 nights for both fighters to prepare, to train without their powers, to remember what it means to be vulnerable. Only one will leave the arena alive. Dominion smiled from across the chamber. 3 nights for the old king to memorize his regrets. But Elder Morgana was not finished. She produced a second scroll. There is another matter. King Ravencroft, you have claimed protection over Lorelei Ashcroft, but the nature of this protection must be formalized before the council. Thaddeus stepped forward. I invoke the blood protection oath, an ancient bond owned in vampire law. Whispers rippled through the assembled immortals. Lorelei Ashcroft carries the Daywalker lineage. Dormant, but extraordinarily rare. I have shielded her from every predator in this city for 8 months. Now I make that protection official. Elder Aldrich's voice cut through the murmurs. My king, you understand what you are declaring? A blood protection oath is sacred, permanent. You are binding yourself to a mortal. I am binding myself to protecting what is mine. More whispers. Louder now. Elder Morgana's expression was unreadable. There is something else the council should know. She looked at Lorelei directly. The last known Daywalker was hunted 500 years ago by an organization known as the Conclave, a vampire extremist faction that sought to weaponize the bloodline. If they learn of Miss Ashcroft's existence, they will come for her regardless of any duel outcome. The temperature in the chamber seemed to drop another degree. Thaddeus's voice was ice and iron. Then let them come. After I have dealt with Blackwell, I will deal with any who threaten what is under my protection. The ceremony was brief, a ceremonial blade, a cut across Thaddeus's palm, blood that gleamed almost black in the torchlight. Drink, he said quietly, and mark yourself as mine before all of vampire kind. Lorelei did not hesitate. She pressed her lips to his palm. The taste of his ancient blood was copper and power and eternity itself. It burned down her throat like liquid fire. She could feel something changing, a bond forming. Invisible threads connecting her to this ancient creature who had ruled in shadow for 8 centuries. When she pulled back, her eyes met his. And in that moment she understood. This was not just about saving Cassie. This was about survival, about evolution, about two people caught in currents of power that stretched back centuries, choosing to stand together against the coming storm. 3 days, Thaddeus said softly, his thumb tracing the blood on her lower lip. 3 days to prepare, to plan, to ensure that when this is over, we both survive what comes next. Lorelei's voice was steady. Then we start now. You train for the fight. I start gathering intelligence on where they are really holding Cassie, and we find out who else is involved in this conspiracy, because Dominion did not orchestrate this alone. She looked past him to the assembled council. Someone in this room is helping him, and in 3 days we are going to expose them all. The chamber fell silent. Elder Aldrich shifted almost imperceptibly, and Lorelei filed that movement away in her mind. The first piece of a puzzle she was determined to solve before the blade fell and blood was spilled on sacred ground. The game had begun, and she was no longer just a secretary caught in the crossfire. She was a player. Dawn broke over New Orleans like a wound opening across the sky. Red light spilling through Thaddeus Ravencroft's private training chamber. The suppression magic had already begun to take effect. Lorelei watched from the observation gallery as Thaddeus moved through combat forms with Garrick, 800 years of muscle memory fighting against mortal limitations. The difference was startling. Without his vampire speed, Thaddeus's movements were still fluid, still precise, but slower, vulnerable. When Garrick's practice blade found its mark across his ribs, the cut did not heal instantly. Blood welled, dark and real. Thaddeus hissed, not from pain, but from the unfamiliar sensation of wounds that lingered. "Again," he commanded. Garrick, 700 years old and built like a siege weapon, reset his stance. "Your defense is strong, my king, but Dominion fights like a berserker, all aggression, all offense. He will not give you time to think." The blades clashed. Steel on steel, the sound echoing off stone walls. Lorelei forced herself to look away. She had work to do. The intelligence room was 3 levels below the training chamber, a converted vault lined with filing systems that predated computers and encrypted servers that hummed with modern data. 8 months of organizing these files had given her an intimate knowledge of the archive. Now she was going to weaponize that knowledge. She pulled communication logs from the past 6 months. Cross-referenced territorial disputes with known Crimson Court operatives, built timelines, mapped patterns. 2 junior vampires assisted her, Malcolm and Sienna, both loyal to Thaddeus, both young enough to understand modern encryption, but old enough to grasp the political implications. Start with any communication that mentions the Garden District, the Warehouse Quarter, or the port, Lorelei instructed. Those were the territories Dominion demanded. There has to be planning. Reconnaissance. Someone inside our organization feeding him information. Malcolm's fingers flew across the keyboard. There are hundreds of files. Then we read hundreds of files. Hours passed. The sun climbed higher. Somewhere above them, Thaddeus continued training, learning to fight like the mortal warrior he had been 8 centuries ago. And Lorelei hunted for traitors. By noon, her eyes burned from reading encrypted text. But she had found something. A pattern in the communication logs. Coded messages sent on specific dates, always after council meetings, always containing information that should have been confidential. "Sienna, pull up the council attendance records for the past year." The records appeared on screen. 13 council members. Perfect attendance from most, but there were absences. Patterns of absence. Lorelei's pulse quickened. Cross-reference these dates with the coded message transmissions. The computer processed. Results populated. Every single coded message was sent within hours of a council meeting, and every single time the same 3 council members had been present. Elder Morgana, Councilman Matthias, and Elder Aldrich. Morgana was Thaddeus's most loyal supporter. Unlikely. Matthias had openly challenged Thaddeus in the chamber. Too obvious. But Aldrich had been subtle, calculating. His challenge had been wrapped in concern rather than confrontation. Pull every communication log associated with Elder Aldrich for the past 6 months, Lorelei said quietly, and run a decryption protocol on anything flagged as personal correspondence. Malcolm hesitated. Miss Ashcroft, that is a council elder's private communications. If we are wrong, I will take full responsibility. Do it. The decryption took an hour. Modern algorithms fighting against blood magic encryption, but eventually the files opened, and Lorelei's blood ran cold. Messages to external contacts, references to the package and the specimen, mentions of something called Protocol Omega, and a name that appeared repeatedly, the Conclave. "Oh, God," Sienna whispered, reading over Lorelei's shoulder. "He has been reporting to them for years." But that was not the worst part. Lorelei opened the most recent message, sent just 2 days ago, before Cassandra's kidnapping. The translation made her hands shake. Phase 1 initiated. Leverage acquired. Target will be forced into vulnerable position during Sanguine Duel. Extraction team to standby. Daywalker bloodline priority alpha. Specimen must be taken alive for experimentation. Lorelei stood so fast her chair toppled backward. Cassandra was not the real target. She was bait. The Conclave wanted Lorelei. They had orchestrated the entire kidnapping to force Thaddeus into the duel, to create chaos, to isolate her. And Elder Aldrich had been feeding them intelligence for years. The weight of it settled on her shoulders. She had uncovered a conspiracy that reached far deeper than a simple territorial dispute. This was not about power or revenge. This was about her blood, her lineage. And suddenly the danger was not just personal, it was existential. She found Thaddeus in the war room, stripped to the waist, bandages wrapped around his ribs where Garrick's blade had cut too deep during training. Without his supernatural healing, he was just flesh and bone and the accumulated scars of 8 centuries. Garrick stood beside him, reviewing arena layouts and tactical positions. Both looked up when Lorelei entered. "We have a problem," she said. She spread the decrypted files across the war table, explained the pattern, the messages, the Conclave, Protocol Omega. Thaddeus's expression did not change as he read, but his knuckles went white where they gripped the table edge. "Aldrich," he said quietly, 6 centuries I have known him, 6 centuries. He has been reporting to the Conclave for at least 3 years, Lorelei continued. Maybe longer. They funded Dominion's rise. They orchestrated Cassie's kidnapping. And their goal is not the territories, it is me. She pulled up the final message. They want to harvest Daywalker blood, create a serum that allows vampires to walk in daylight. They believe it will shift the global power balance, make vampires the dominant species. Garrick's voice was granite. If we expose Aldrich now, we could cancel the duel, arrest the conspirators, extract Cassandra before— No! Thaddeus's voice cut through the room like a blade. If I break duel protocol, I lose legitimacy. Every neutral vampire turns against us. The council fractures, and the Conclave disappears back into shadow. We lose our chance to dismantle them. He looked at Lorelei. How long do we have before they move on you? The message says extraction team on standby during the duel. They are waiting for maximum chaos. When you and Dominion are locked in combat, when the council's attention is divided, when the sacred ground suppression field limits everyone's abilities equally. Thaddeus was silent for a long moment. Then he turned to Garrick. Change of strategy. The duel proceeds as planned. It maintains honor. It keeps the council stable. But we run a parallel operation. He moved pieces on the tactical map. Garrick, you take a strike team. During the duel, you extract Cassandra. The Conclave expects us to try this, but they do not know we have decoded their communications. We know the real holding location now. Garrick nodded. And the extraction team targeting Miss Ashcroft? Lorelei spoke before Thaddeus could. I stay at the arena. I monitor communications. And when Aldrich makes his move, I expose him in front of the entire council with evidence they cannot deny. Both men looked at her. You would be alone, Thaddeus said carefully. Vulnerable. Remember what Morgana said, the sacred ground extends 50 yards. Inside that perimeter, you have no more protection than any mortal. If Aldrich has other conspirators, then I deal with them. Her voice was steel. This is my fight too. Cassie is my sister. I am the one they are hunting. And I refuse to hide while others risk everything. She stepped closer to the tactical map. Think about it strategically. Aldrich expects me to be passive, to stay protected, to be the victim. If I am visibly present at the arena, operating intelligence, he will assume his cover is intact. It gives us the element of surprise. Garrick's expression was approving despite himself. She is right. Aldrich has been a spy for years because he understands how to blend in, how to appear loyal while undermining from within. If we tip our hand too early, he vanishes, takes the conclave network with him. Thaddeus looked at Lorelei for a long moment. You understand the risk. I understand that this is bigger than just saving Cassie. This is about dismantling a conspiracy that threatens everything you have built for 800 years. And I understand that I am not just a secretary anymore. I am choosing to be something more. Day 2 began before dawn. Lorelei had not slept. The intelligence room had become her war room. Maps covered every surface. Communication intercepts printed and cross-referenced. A conspiracy web that grew more complex with every hour. Malcolm and Sienna worked in shifts, but Lorelei refused to rest. She traced the conclave's network across 3 continents, safe houses, shell corporations, vampire cells operating under cover of legitimate businesses. The organization was vast, ancient, and patient. They have been planning this for decades, she murmured, connecting lines on the map. Dominion's grudge against Thaddeus was real, but the conclave exploited it, funded his rise, gave him resources, all to create this exact scenario. Sienna highlighted another file. There are references here to previous Daywalker hunts, 500 years ago, 300 years ago. Each time the conclave tried to capture specimens for experimentation. Each time they failed because the Daywalkers died during extraction. They have learned from past failures, Lorelei said. This time they are not just grabbing me off the street. They are creating controlled chaos, using the duel as cover. With Aldrich feeding them intelligence, they know exactly when I will be most vulnerable. Malcolm pulled up security footage from the cathedral. If they are planning extraction during the duel, they will need access points. Exits, vehicles nearby. Lorelei studied the cathedral layout. The arena was open air surrounded by bayou, limited approach vectors, but also limited escape routes. Garrick will have his team positioned for Cassie's rescue. That leaves arena security thin. Aldrich will use that. He will create a distraction, pull guards away from my position, then move. She marked positions on the map. We need countermeasures. Malcolm, Sienna, I need you positioned here and here during the duel. Armed with silver-loaded crossbows, hidden. Aldrich does not know you have been working with me. You are my ace in the hole. The planning took hours, contingencies upon contingencies. Lorelei felt the weight of it settling on her shoulders, lives depending on decisions she was making. This was not filing paperwork. This was war, and she was helping command it. But there was something else, too. A nagging sense that she was missing a piece. The conclave's messages were too detailed, too specific, as if they had more current intelligence than even Aldrich could provide. She pulled up the most recent intercept again, studied the timestamp, and her blood froze. The message was sent 4 hours ago, after Aldrich would have known they were investigating him, after he should have gone dark, which meant either he was reckless or, "They know we cracked their communications," she breathed. "This is disinformation." Malcolm looked up sharply. "What?" "Look at the timestamp. This was sent after we started decrypting Aldrich's files. They are feeding us false information, the extraction team, the location, maybe even Cassie's holding site." She grabbed her radio. "I need to tell Garrick. We need to verify Cassandra's location independently before the strike team moves." But even as she said it, she realized the deeper problem. If the conclave knew they had been compromised, They would accelerate their timeline, change their plans, adapt, which meant the duel was no longer just about Thaddeus versus Dominion. It was about who could outthink whom in a game where every move was being watched. Thaddeus found her late on the second night. She was alone in the intelligence room, staring at surveillance footage of Cassandra's dorm room. The moment of the kidnapping played on loop. "You should rest," he said quietly from the doorway. "So should you." He moved to stand beside her. His wounds from training were bandaged but still visible, mortality made manifest. "Garrick tells me you have designed our entire tactical response." "I organized the intelligence. He refined the military strategy." "That is not what he said. He said you think like a general, that you see the battlefield in layers, and immediate threats and long-term consequences." Lorelei finally looked at him. "I have spent 8 months reading after-action reports from your 800 years of conflicts. I learned from the best." Thaddeus was quiet for a moment. "There is something I need to tell you, a contingency you must know before tomorrow night." She waited. "If I fall in the duel, if Dominion proves faster or luckier or more desperate than I anticipate, Garrick becomes king. He has orders to protect you and Cassandra, to expose the conclave, to finish what I started. You are not going to fall, perhaps, but 800 years have taught me to plan for every outcome." His eyes held hers. "You have given me something I have not had in centuries, Lorelei, a reason to survive beyond mere obligation. For 800 years, I ruled because someone had to, because the alternative was chaos. But you have reminded me what it means to protect something because I choose to, not because duty demands it." She felt something tighten in her chest. "Then choose to survive tomorrow. Choose to come back, because I need you to see this through to the end." His cold hand found hers. "I intend to, but if the worst happens, I need you to promise me something. Do not let Garrick inherit this war alone. Work with him. Guide him. Your tactical mind combined with his military experience could dismantle the conclave in ways I never could. You are asking me to inherit your legacy. I am asking you to help preserve it." Lorelei turned back to the surveillance footage, Cassie's terrified face frozen on screen. "I analyzed Dominion's combat patterns from historical records. He is aggressive, overwhelming force. He relies on intimidation and speed." She pulled up tactical assessments. "But he has a tell. Every major engagement he favors attacks from the right side, compensating for an old injury from the Blackmore Ridge massacre, a blade wound that never quite healed properly, even with vampire regeneration." Thaddeus leaned closer, studying the analysis. "How did you—" "Medical reports from your archive, cross-referenced with combat footage. The injury is subtle, but it is there. And in a fight where both of you are mortal, that weakness becomes critical." She met his eyes. "You are 800 years of accumulated wisdom and adaptation. He is 400 years of anger and resentment. You will win, not because you are stronger, but because you are smarter." Day 3 arrived with the weight of inevitability. The final preparations were made in silence. Garrick assembled his strike team, 6 of Thaddeus's most loyal vampires, all briefed on multiple possible locations for Cassandra's holding cell, all prepared to adapt if the intelligence proved false. Lorelei set up her mobile command center, encrypted communications, direct lines to Garrick's team, surveillance feeds from every camera in a 3-block radius, and, concealed in her jacket, a ceremonial silver dagger, just in case. Thaddeus came to her before the final procession to the arena. He was dressed simply, black combat clothing, no armor, no decoration. The ceremonial chains that would suppress his powers were already beginning to glow with activation magic. "3 days ago, you were my secretary," he said quietly. "Now you command intelligence operations and design military strategy. 3 days ago, I thought I was just surviving in a world I barely understood. Now I am fighting to save it." She straightened his collar, a gesture of intimacy that surprised them both. I have mapped every possible contingency. Garrick knows the extraction routes. I know Aldrich's likely moves. And you have the tactical advantage because Dominion does not know we have analyzed his patterns. And yet there are variables we cannot control. There are always variables, but we have minimized them. And more importantly, we are not fighting separate battles. We are coordinated. When Aldrich makes his move, when Dominion thinks he has the advantage, we will show them what real strategic thinking looks like. Thaddeus studied her face. If this goes wrong, if I do not return, then I will finish it. I will work with Garrick. I will dismantle the conclave cell by cell. I will protect Cassie. And I will make sure that your 800 years of work was not in vain. She stood on her toes and pressed her forehead to his. But you are going to return. Because I have seen you train. I have analyzed the opposition. And I know that when the blade falls and blood is demanded, you will be the one left standing. His cold lips brushed her temple. Then I will see you on the other side of this night. And when it is over, we will hunt the conclave together. No more shadows, no more conspiracies. We bring them into the light, and we end them. Together, Lorelei agreed. The word hung between them like a vow. The procession to the arena began at midnight. A convoy of vehicles moving through the bayou roads, witnesses from both courts, neutral council members, and somewhere in the darkness, the conclave's extraction team waiting for their moment. Lorelei rode in Thaddeus's vehicle, Garrick in the command car behind them. The strike team dispersed to their staging positions. Her earpiece crackled. All teams in position, Garrick's voice confirmed. We have identified 3 possible holding locations based on conclave communication patterns, teams assigned to each. We move simultaneously when the duel begins. Lorelei activated her encrypted channel. Aldrich just left the main convoy, heading toward the cathedral on a separate route. He is positioning himself exactly as predicted. Acknowledged. Malcolm and Sienna? In position, hidden. Armed. They know the protocol. She looked at Thaddeus. His expression was calm, focused. 800 years of existence compressed into this single night. Second thoughts? She asked quietly. About the duel? No. About involving you in this conspiracy? Every moment. Too late now. We are committed. The arena came into view through the trees, ancient stone rising from the swampland, torches burning with cold fire. The assembled witnesses already taking their positions. This was it, the culmination of 3 days of planning, 3 centuries of rivalry, 800 years of rule tested against 400 years of resentment. And underneath it all, a conspiracy that reached across continents and centuries, finally about to be exposed. Lorelei touched the silver dagger concealed in her jacket. She had come to New Orleans as a secretary. She was about to become something else entirely. The vehicle stopped. The doors opened. And the final act began. The ancient dueling ground rose from the Louisiana bayou like a monument to forgotten wars. Circular stone arena, weathered by centuries of vampire blood. Torches casting violent shadows across assembled witnesses. Lorelei positioned her intelligence station at the arena's edge. Surveillance feeds, encrypted channels, direct lines to Garrick's strike team. From here she could see everything, the arena floor, the council thrones, the shadows where Aldrich had positioned himself, thinking he was unobserved. Her earpiece crackled. Strike team in position, Garrick confirmed. Visual on Cassandra. 12 guards, conclave symbols. Hold until ceremonial chains activate, Lorelei whispered. That is your window. Thaddeus entered the arena. Simple black clothing. No armor. The ceremonial chains wrapped around his wrists. Ancient metal inscribed with suppression runes pulsing with power. Click, lock, seal. His eyes dimmed. That supernatural glow fading to something almost human. Movements infinitesimally slower. Vulnerable. Dominion Blackwell entered from the opposite side, similarly bound. His expression, cruel confidence. He caught Lorelei's eye and smiled. Mouthed words she could not hear but understood. Mine. Her hand moved to the silver dagger concealed in her jacket. Not today. Elder Morgana raised her hand. The crowd fell silent. This sanguine duel is witnessed and sanctioned under the oldest laws of our kind. Both combatants fight as mortals. All vampire abilities suppressed. Only one leaves this arena alive. She paused. If King Thaddeus Ravencroft claims victory, Cassandra Ashcroft freed unharmed. The Crimson Court disbanded. All claims on Lorelei Ashcroft voided. If Lord Dominion Blackwell claims victory, he receives the territories and Lorelei Ashcroft for 1 century. Let blood settle what words cannot. Begin. The first clash rang out like a bell tolling. Dominion attacked immediately. All fury. Overwhelming assault. The kind that had won him 100 battles. But Thaddeus was not there when the blade fell. Minimal movement. Maximum efficiency. 800 years compressed into economy of motion. Lorelei's fingers flew across her keyboard, tracking patterns. Dominion fighting exactly as predicted. Right side bias. Aggressive combinations. Her earpiece crackled. Strike team moving. Executing extraction. On surveillance feeds, she watched Garrick's team approach the warehouse. 6 vampires moving with precision. Then, something wrong. She pulled up building schematics, cross-referenced recent intercepts. A message sent 2 hours ago, her blood ran cold. Garrick, abort, decoy location. They moved Cassie, sending new coordinates now. Silence. Then Garrick's controlled fury. Confirmed. Seeing mannequins, redirecting. In the arena, Dominion's blade found its mark. A cut across Thaddeus's shoulder. First blood. First blood, old king. How does it feel to bleed like mortals? Thaddeus responded with violence. Calculated strikes driving Dominion backward. Superior technique showing through. The shoulder wound bled freely, but he moved as if pain was simply another variable. 800 years of surviving impossible odds. Lorelei split her attention. Duel. Extraction operation. And Aldrich moving closer to her position, his path deliberate. He thought she had not noticed. Her hand closed around the silver dagger. The duel intensified. Both combatants bleeding. Both exhausted. You left us to die, Dominion roared. Blackmore Ridge, you abandoned your own. Thaddeus deflected. Parried. Ice-cold precision. I ordered retreat to prevent a war that would have exposed our entire species. You ignored orders. Your battalion died because of your pride, not my strategy. Cowardice, their blades locked, both straining against mortal limitations. You have forgotten what we are, Dominion hissed. Apex predators. We should rule through strength. Thaddeus's voice was granite. I remember exactly what we were. Monsters who nearly went extinct because we could not evolve. I have ruled 800 years, not through power alone, but through understanding that true strength is endurance, building something that lasts. He broke the lock. Devastating strike across Dominion's thigh. You are 400 years old and learned nothing. Lorelei's surveillance picked up movement. 3 figures approaching, coordinated, professional. The Conclave's extraction team, led by Aldrich. She kept typing, playing the vulnerable secretary focused on screens. Let them get close. Her earpiece crackled. Reached tertiary location, engaging. Cassandra confirmed. Visual on your sister. Relief flooded through her. She clicked once. Acknowledgement. In the arena, Thaddeus disarmed Dominion. The younger vampire's blade skittered across stone. Victory seconds away. Aldrich made his move. Forgive me, Miss Ashcroft, but you are far too valuable to remain in King Ravencroft's protection. She turned slowly. Aldrich 3 feet away. 2 Conclave operatives flanking. All vampires, all focused on her. Arena 50 yards distant. Thaddeus occupied. Garrick off-site. Alone. Exactly as planned. Elder Aldrich, she said calmly, I have been expecting you. His eyes narrowed. You knew? For 2 days. Your encrypted communications were not as secure as you believed. I know about the Conclave, Protocol Omega, your plan to harvest Daywalker blood. Everything. Aldrich's expression shifted. Then you understand this is inevitable. Come willingly or by force. Third option, which is? Lorelei's hand moved. The silver dagger cleared her jacket, but she did not attack. She drove it into the stone floor, hard, upright, visible to everyone. A signal. Shadows erupted. Malcolm and Sienna, positioned exactly where she had told them to hide, armed with silver crossbows. Both fired. The two conclave operatives went down. Silver bolts through hearts. True death in seconds. Aldrich spun, but Lorelei had already closed the distance. 600 years versus 26. Ancient vampire versus mortal, but the sacred ground's suppression extended 50 yards. Elder Morgana had announced it 3 days ago. They were all mortal here. You baited me, Aldrich breathed. I gave you exactly what you expected, a vulnerable target. But I am not a victim, Elder Aldrich. I am the woman who decoded your conspiracy, who designed the tactical response extracting my sister right now. She raised the dagger. Who spent 8 months organizing intelligence on every vampire in this city? Aldrich lunged. She sidestepped, used his momentum, drove silver between his ribs. The blade found his heart. For 800 years, she whispered, Thaddeus trusted you, and you betrayed him. Aldrich crumpled. True death claiming him. The arena fell silent, every eye on the mortal woman standing over an elder vampire's disintegrating corpse. The council erupted in chaos. Councilman Matthias stared at Aldrich's remains. 6 centuries on this council, and we never suspected. Lady Seraphine's voice was sharp. How many decisions were compromised? How many policies shaped by conclave influence? Elder Morgana rose, ancient face carved from stone, but Lorelei saw the pain beneath. I have known Aldrich for 400 years, fought beside him in 3 wars, trusted him with intelligence that could have destroyed us all. Her eyes met Lorelei's. And a mortal secretary uncovered his betrayal in 3 days, where we missed it for years. Perhaps that is the lesson we most need to learn tonight. Garrick's voice boomed across the arena. She speaks truth. He had returned. Cassandra cradled in his arms. Unconscious but breathing, wrists no longer bound, compulsion marks fading. We found her exactly where Miss Ashcroft's intelligence indicated, guarded by conclave operatives bearing Aldrich's personal seal. The evidence is irrefutable. He laid Cassandra gently near the council thrones. She is safe, my king. In the arena, Thaddeus stood over Dominion's disarmed form, blade pressed against throat. Yield, he commanded. Dominion's bloody smile was bitter. Finish it. You were a great general once, before the conclave exploited your grief and turned you into their weapon. The blade pressed deeper. But you chose this path, kidnapped an innocent, allied with extremists, threatened everything I have worked 800 years to build. Thaddeus's expression was winter frost. This is not murder. This is justice. The blade finished it. Lord Dominion Blackwell met his final death on blood-stained stones. Elder Morgana's voice resonated with authority. King Thaddeus Ravencroft is declared victor. Terms are binding. Crimson Court disbanded. Territories forfeit to the crown. All claims on Lorelei Ashcroft voided in perpetuity. She turned to the witnesses. Any who wish to challenge this ruling may step forward. Silence. Not a single vampire moved. 2 weeks passed in controlled storm. Aldrich's conspiracy laid bare. Every communication, every contact. 3 other council members implicated as willfully ignorant, removed from positions. New council appointed. Younger vampires who understood survival required evolution. Cassandra recovered under Thaddeus's healers. The compulsion carefully removed. Memories blurred to bad dreams. The first time she was truly lucid, Lorelei sat beside the recovery bed and held her sister's hand. You came for me, Cassie whispered. Even through the compulsion, some part of me knew. Always, no matter what it costs. Cassie's eyes studied her face. You killed for me. Garrick told me. You killed a council elder with your own hands. Lorelei did not look away. I would kill 100 more if that is what it took. That is what scares me. Not that you did it, but that you mean it. You have changed, Lore. You are not the same person who came to New Orleans 8 months ago. No, I am not, and I cannot go back. But I am still your sister. That will never change. Cassie squeezed her hand. Good, because I need my terrifying strategist sister to help me catch up on the semester I missed while being kidnapped by vampire extremists. The laugh that escaped Lorelei was half-sob. Deal. The transformation offer came on the 14th day. Thaddeus presented it formally. Private chambers. Garrick as witness. You have proven invaluable. Tactical mind, strategic thinking, courage under fire. He produced an ancient ceremonial blade. I can offer you eternity, vampire transformation, power, immortality, a place at my side as we dismantle the conclave and rebuild our society. Lorelei looked at the blade, the weight of the choice settling. 8 months ago, she would have been terrified, would have seen it as losing her humanity. Now she understood differently. This was not about loss. It was about choosing what she would become. I am honored, truly, but I need to decline. For now, both men looked surprised. My mortal perspective gives me advantages you cannot replicate. I see patterns that centuries might blind you to. I understand vulnerabilities ancient vampires have forgotten. I think like the prey the conclave hunts, which makes me uniquely positioned to anticipate their moves. She met Thaddeus's gaze. Let me finish what we started. Let me dismantle their network while I still carry this perspective. When that work is done, when the threat is neutralized, and I have given everything my mortal mind can offer, she paused, then ask me again, and I will say yes. Thaddeus's expression shifted to something like pride. You are not refusing immortality. You are choosing the strategic moment for transformation. Exactly. Garrick cleared his throat. If I may, we need someone to oversee the new intelligence division, someone who understands tactical operations and political maneuvering. Someone the Council will respect despite mortality, or because of it. Thaddeus nodded. Lorelei Ashcroft, I offer you the position of Security Director, command over all intelligence operations, direct authority over threat assessment. You would report only to me and the Council. I accept. 6 months later, the war room had become Lorelei's second home. Maps covered every wall, 3 continents. Red pins marked confirmed conclave cells. Yellow indicated suspects. Blue showed allied courts. The network was vast, but she was mapping it methodically. Malcolm and Sienna had been promoted to senior intelligence analysts. The 2 junior vampires who helped decode Aldrich's conspiracy now ran entire departments dedicated to counter-conclave operations. You trained them well, Garrick observed. I gave them purpose. They did the rest. Thaddeus entered carrying intelligence reports. They gathered around the central table. 3 minds in seamless coordination. Berlin reports movement, a conclave cell attempting to relocate. They are running scared, Lorelei replied. Fear makes them sloppy. Garrick, can we intercept? Strike team standing by for your order. She studied the map, calculated distances, timing, risk. Execute. But I want prisoners. We need intelligence on their leadership. Garrick left to coordinate. Thaddeus moved beside her, shoulder touching hers. Casualness developed over 6 months. You have dismantled 12 cells in 6 months, recruited 4 allied courts, restructured our entire intelligence apparatus. We dismantled 12 cells, she corrected. Not my victory alone. But it began with you, in a closet, crying over your sister, and transformed into this. He gestured to the war room. She allowed herself a small smile. The order is not new yet. We have disrupted the conclave, but they are still out there, still hunting. She pulled up recent intelligence. They are mobilizing, consolidating. They know we are coming, and they are preparing for larger conflict. Then we do not wait for them to be ready. Thaddeus's voice was iron. We have spent 6 months on defense, reacting, dismantling cells as we find them. What if we went on offense? used your intelligence to strike at their leadership directly. Lorelei felt the weight settle on her shoulders. This was no longer about protecting her sister or Thaddeus's empire. This was about the future. If we strike their leadership, they will retaliate with everything. Total war. I know. We could lose. I have been losing battles for 800 years and still standing. I do not intend to stop now. Garrick's voice through the intercom. Berlin strike successful. 3 prisoners secured. Initial interrogation reveals reference to Central Command structure. Location encrypted, but they claim it exists. Lorelei and Thaddeus exchanged a look. She made the decision. Priority interrogation. I want that location. Command structure. Every piece of intelligence they have. She turned to Thaddeus. You are right. We have been reactive too long. Time to take the fight to them. She pointed to the map. I will find their central command, map their leadership, and we will bring them down, not as scattered cells, but as coordinated strike that decapitates the entire organization. Thaddeus's smile was sharp and dangerous. 800 years I ruled through patience, but there is a reason I survived. His eyes blazed. I know when patience ends and war begins, and I know how to win. Lorelei felt the silver dagger still in her jacket. Reminder of the night she became something more. Then we plan, we prepare, and we show the conclave what happens when they threaten what is ours. She looked at the map. I came to New Orleans as a secretary who fell into a world she barely understood. I became a spy, a strategist, a warrior. Now I am the architect of the campaign that will either save vampire society or burn it to ash trying. Thaddeus's cold hand found hers. Together, she agreed. Standing in a war room mapping the destruction of an ancient conspiracy, Lorelei Ashcroft understood what she had truly become. Not a victim, not a survivor, but a general in a war that would determine the future of 2 worlds. The real battle was just beginning.